includes marriage licenses, divorce decrees, and sometimes court orders. Guess who doesn't keep their marriage certificates the first time their name changes, if in fact they've divorced? Some of my divorced friends. So time and time again, we send women away from the Bureau of Motor Vehicles to go track down certified copies of all of these legal documents so that they can simply get their ID, their real ID. Now, to implement this, at the point of updating your voter registration or registering to vote for the first time will mean that in states like ours, with online voter registration, with automatic voter registration of the Bureau of Motor Vehicles, and with same-day voter registration on election day, we're suddenly going to see large numbers of voters and disproportionately women and seniors turned away. So make no mistake, all of us agree that citizens and only citizens should be voting in our federal elections. Already, we have well-constructed checks and balances to make that happen. The SAVE Act is a hasty power grab to allow politicians to choose their voters instead of voters choosing their elected leaders. Thanks very much, and I'll turn it back to you, Serafina.
Thank you so much, Secretary Bellows. And with that, I will turn things to Secretary Hanzas.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Secretary Bellows, for kicking us off. I am so glad to be here today to be together with my fellow secretaries in defense of something that is foundational in a democracy, and that is our right to vote. In Vermont, we have always taken great pride in fostering our democracy that's not only secure, but welcoming. So many of the mechanisms that Secretary Bellows talked about for people to be able to get registered to vote also exist here in Vermont, because we don't want unnecessary barriers and arbitrary deadlines to stand between Vermonters and their right to choose their elected officials. We don't make people jump through hoops in order to be able to cast a ballot. And it's because our system is built on trust in voters, that voters will elect their leaders and tell their leaders what they want them to do. The SAVE Act is really a dangerous step, and it's a step in absolutely the wrong direction. Very straightforward and candid, this bill will disenfranchise women. It will disenfranchise many different groups of eligible voters, and Secretary Bellows has talked a bit about married women and the additional hoops that they will have to jump through. But I think it will also disadvantage rural voters, voters who live in one rural community but work, half an hour, 45 minutes away in another. It will disadvantage people who have lost their documents due to natural disasters. And it's really unconscionable to think that we would disenfranchise someone for not having those documents. When restrictive voter ID laws and voter roll purges swept through other states, they hit women and communities of color and rural Americans the first, and they hit us the hardest. And, they bring out the SAVE Act and cloak it in this rhetoric of election integrity. When what it really does is it pushes women out of the democratic process. And it's not a coincidence. It's part of a strategy to make voting harder, to sow distrust in our elections, in fact, distrust in government in general, and to undermine our faith in government itself. And, this is in the context of the GOP's broader war on women, whether it's bodily autonomy, economic freedom, or the ability to have our political voice heard in the elections realm. We can protect our elections, we can secure our elections without punishing voters and without putting unnecessary, arbitrary barriers between a person and their right to exercise the right to vote. Vermont already conducts secure, fair, accessible elections. We verify our voter eligibility. We protect against fraud in every step in the system. And we don't need to put these barriers in front of people's right to vote just to score political points. You know, this feels really personal for me. I started on a quest a week and a half ago to begin to assemble my documents. I have yet to actually obtain any of the certified documents that I would need. But I come from a position of relative advantage because I work in an office and I have a computer sitting in front of me. And I have the time and space in my life to begin to assemble these documents. But when I think about my fellow Vermonters who are working hard every day, you know, maybe you're standing behind a cash register, or maybe you're swinging a hammer. You don't have access to a computer and a printer and the ability to, to assemble what you need just to be able to request those documents. You know, democracy doesn't work unless it works for everyone, not just the privileged few who get to sit behind a computer during their work days. We need to stop the SAVE Act. We need to call it what it is. It is a voter suppression tactic that's dressed up as some sort of reform. And we have to keep fighting for a democracy that's worthy of all the people that it serves. So thank you so much for being here today, and I look forward to hearing from Secretary Griswold.
Thank you so much, Secretary Hanzas. That was excellent. And now I will turn things over to our final speaker, Secretary Griswold.
Thank you, and good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. I'm Secretary of State of Colorado, Jenna Griswold. First, I want to thank my fellow secretaries. As women elected leaders, we must have our voices heard, especially on issues that could directly impact voters we serve and their ability to participate in our democracy. The SAVE Act is being debated in the House of Representatives today and is just the latest example of MAGA strategy to spread disinformation, intimidate election workers, and disenfranchise voters. This measure will not save anything. In fact, it does the opposite. It silences eligible American voters, especially women and people of color. The SAVE Act would discourage, prevent, and disenfranchise millions of eligible Americans from exercising their sacred democratic rights. It would impose rigid, unnecessary ID requirements that would disproportionately affect married women, many of whom may not have changed their name or have their name changed, many of whom may not have their name change reflected across every single one of their IDs. Nationwide, as many as 69 million women have taken their spouse's name and do not have a birth certificate matching their legal name. Here in Colorado, that includes 1.3 million women. And 9% of Americans 18 years old and older don't have ready access to the documents that this bill requires. That percentage is even higher for voters of color. That's at 11% of voters of color. Let's be clear. Millions of Americans could be disenfranchised by House Republicans and Donald Trump. Losing your driver's license or birth certificate, letting your passport expired, or even getting married and taking your partner's last name could all prevent a voter from making their voice heard in free and fair elections if the SAVE Act passes. Replacing just one of those documents, let alone multiple documents that would be needed to register, takes time and money that not every American has. Women who are citizens, who are eligible to vote, should not be stopped at the ballot box by Mike Johnson and Donald Trump. Secretary Copeland Hanzas is absolutely correct. This is the continued attack by Donald Trump on American women to restrict our rights, to restrict our freedoms in Trump's America. We cannot let it stand. The SAVE Act is a 21st century poll tax. It is outrageous to force voters to spend hundreds of dollars in order to exercise our constitutional rights to vote. And of course, I think it's necessary to say it's coming just 2 weeks after Donald Trump issued an unlawful executive order seeking to create uncertainty, chaos, and doubt in elections as quickly as possible. I'm proud of the work in Colorado that we've done to make the ballot accessible and secure. We have shown that you can have high turnout and strong security without disenfranchising eligible Americans. As Colorado Secretary of State, along with my fellow secretaries, We will always fight to defend the freedom to vote. I urge Congress and the American people to reject H.R. 22 and to reject the baseless conspiracies that are being used to justify a bill to disenfranchise millions. We need to expand access, not roll it back. We need to trust voters and allow them to vote, not disenfranchise them because we're afraid of who they will choose. And we need to protect our democracy and not let it be eroded by Donald Trump and MAGA Republicans. With that, thank you, Serafina, and I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you, Secretary Griswold, and thank you again to all three of our speakers for making the stakes of this fight for our democracy so clear. We have just a few minutes for any questions from attendees. If any reporters on the call would like to, you can raise your hand by clicking the button at the bottom of your screen. So I will leave just a few minutes for that if there are any. All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. I will go ahead and wrap the call. I'm incredibly grateful for everyone's time. Thank you again, Secretary Hanzas, Secretary Bellows, and Secretary Griswold. Have a good day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. See you later.